Let's have a look at a poll by YouGov, who do all the polls, right? And we go back here a good 10 years, and you can see, I mean, basically for quite a long time, the people who didn't like Prince Harry were in a serious minority, below 20%. And if I just show you 2018 there, that's the year Harry and Meghan got married, OK? So at that point, 80% are positive about Harry. That's their wedding. And then it starts to go wrong. Now, you could argue it was him deciding to take out legal cases against the papers, and then the papers start to, maybe they start to respond with a slew of negative stories, whatever. It's not clear how you get this situation where it starts to tail off. The positive starts to go down, the negative starts to go up. But this is really clear. This is the moment when there are more negative thoughts about Harry than positive ones, and that's Oprah, right? So Oprah Winfrey interview is there. So at the point where they denounce the royal family, and at the time the Queen was alive, of course, recollections may vary, that then seems to do a very bad blow to his reputation. But it gets worse because here, look at this, this is where we start to get, now, interestingly, this is where he is now. You might say to yourself, well, hang on a minute, there was a little recovery here. The positives went up and the negatives went down. What was happening? And the answer was, that is the time of the Queen's death. And you then had this situation where you saw the so-called Fab Four, William and Kate, Meghan and Harry, actually together. And maybe people thought, look, they've patched it up and whatever. So it goes up and then now it's come down. It's almost like if you want to destroy your own reputation, Eve, you write a book called Spare about the royal family and then you give interviews and you do what he's done. He's actually almost given us the how-to destroy my own reputation.
Welcome back to Meghan and Harry Tales, the show that gives you the real stories behind the headlines, breaking down the myths and revealing the truth behind Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's ongoing journey. Today's topic? The tired, recycled narrative that claims Prince Harry has gone from being the media darling to one of the most unpopular members of the royal family. But as always, we're not here to swallow what the media feeds us. No, we're here to tear it apart and look at what's really going on. There's a lot to dissect in this episode, but we're focusing on two main voices: Ailsa Anderson, Queen Elizabeth's former press secretary, and UK talk show host Jeremy Vine. Both of them have come out with claims that Harry was absolutely loved by the public and media, only to fall from grace. But there's a pattern here that we need to pay attention to. When you dig deeper, it's clear that this so-called fall from grace isn't about Harry changing for the worse. It's about him breaking away from the control of the monarchy and the media, and how the system just couldn't handle that. Let's start with Jeremy Vine's commentary. Vine, a prominent UK media personality, recently weighed in on Harry's supposed decline in popularity. He suggested that Harry has alienated people over time, painting a picture of a once beloved figure who has lost touch with the public. But let's ask ourselves this: has Harry really changed that much? Or is this about the media crafting a new narrative because Harry isn't playing their game anymore? Vine's take, while seemingly neutral, doesn't dig into the root causes of the shift in public perception. What's missing is an acknowledgement of how the British tabloid press has actively shaped this decline. We know that public opinion is often a reflection of media coverage. When you see negative headlines about someone day in and day out, it's no surprise that their popularity would take a hit. This is exactly what happened to Harry. The relentless negative press, the calculated hit pieces, and the constant barrage of false stories about him and Meghan were designed to erode their public standing. So, when Vine breaks down Harry's popularity over time, he overlooks the role the media played in orchestrating this so-called downfall. It's not that Harry has fundamentally changed, he's just no longer towing the royal line. And that, in the eyes of the establishment and much of the British press, is unforgivable. Then we have Ailsa Anderson, former press secretary to Queen Elizabeth, recently reflected on her time working with the royal family, specifically highlighting Prince Harry. Anderson described Harry as the media's darling, someone who was absolutely loved for his charm, humour, and his image as a war hero. She also mentioned how royal correspondents couldn't get enough of him. In fact, Anderson shares a rather playful memory of Harry posing for a photo with her outside a ladies' restroom. This was the Harry the British press adored, the cheeky, fun prince who always made headlines for the right reasons. Now, Anderson's portrayal paints a rosy picture, one that suggests Harry's popularity was unshakable as long as he was a working royal. But let's be real. What's missing from this narrative? First, it's important to recognise that Anderson is speaking from a time when Harry was operating within the monarchy's constraints, a time when he hadn't yet publicly challenged the system. She remembers a version of Harry that played his assigned role, the spare, not the heir, the one meant to provide entertainment but not upset the established order. This, Harry wasn't supposed to steal the spotlight from William, nor was he expected to make any significant changes. But that's exactly what Harry did. And as we'll explore throughout today's episode, it wasn't Harry who changed, it was the media's perception of him. What Ailsa Anderson and others like her fail to address is when, and more importantly why, the media turned against Harry. This so-called fall from grace is often framed as though Harry somehow lost the love of the people by making reckless decisions or being out of touch. But what really happened is more complex. Let's talk about the timeline. Harry's status as a media darling held strong until two key events: his marriage to Meghan Markle and his decision to step back from royal duties. In fact, you could argue that even before Megxit, the seeds of the media's discontent were being sown. Remember, the moment Meghan entered the picture, the tabloids shifted their focus. No longer was Harry simply the cheeky prince. They now had a new narrative, one that revolved around Meghan's every move, often in stark contrast to the treatment of Kate Middleton. Why was this? Meghan, a biracial American actress, represented something the royal family had never dealt with at this level. She didn't fit the mold of what the media wanted for Harry or the monarchy. Almost overnight, the narrative turned from Harry the hero to Harry under the spell of Meghan Markle. And this change wasn't subtle. It was a full-on assault on Meghan's character, her background, and her intentions. The coverage quickly became vicious, and Harry's popularity began to dip, not because of his actions, but because the media wanted him back in the box they'd built for him. We all remember the headlines. There were endless stories criticising Meghan for doing the same things Kate Middleton was praised for: cradling her baby bump, wearing fashionable outfits, or speaking her mind. And every time Harry defended his wife, the media framed him as being controlled or misguided. Let's take a step back and look at how public opinion is shaped by the media. When Ailsa Anderson talks about how Harry was loved during his time as a working royal, we have to ask, loved by whom? The media, certainly. The public? Well, public opinion is always a reflection of media coverage. When Harry was playing his role as the fun-loving, slightly rebellious prince, he fit the narrative the media wanted to sell. But once he stepped outside that role, the press started tearing him down. We've seen this pattern before with other public figures. It's not unique to Harry, but it's particularly potent in his case because of his royal status and because of Meghan. The press used to love Harry when he was the lovable bachelor, the spare who wasn't a threat to the monarchy. But the moment he decided to forge his own path, the media narrative flipped. It wasn't Harry who changed. He simply stopped playing by their rules. This is how the media manipulates public perception. By flooding the news cycle with negative stories, they control the narrative. Then, when people's opinions shift, they point to those opinions as evidence that they were right all along. It's a vicious cycle, and Harry and Meghan have been caught in the middle of it for years now. One of the most common pieces of evidence the media likes to point to when discussing Harry's decline in popularity is the YouGov polls. Time and time again, we see headlines about how Harry and Meghan are now among the least popular members of the royal family. But let's unpack that for a moment. What are these polls really measuring? Public opinion is incredibly fluid, and it's often shaped by the stories people see in the press. When negative stories about Harry and Meghan dominate the headlines, it's no surprise that their poll numbers take a hit. But we need to ask ourselves, are these polls a true reflection of Harry and Meghan as people, or are they a reflection of the relentless media campaign against them? Polls can be misleading because they only capture a snapshot in time. They don't tell the whole story. Yes, Harry and Meghan's popularity may have dipped in recent years, but that's not the same as saying they've lost the support of everyone. In fact, outside of the UK, their popularity remains strong, particularly in the United States. The media conveniently ignores this fact because it doesn't fit their narrative. In the end, what we're really seeing here is a battle of narratives. On one side, we have the British media which has a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. They loved Harry when he fit their mold, but now that he's broken free, they're determined to tear him down. On the other side, we have Harry and Meghan, who are simply trying to live their lives on their own terms. Ailsa Anderson's comments and Jeremy Vine's analysis may seem like neutral observations, but they're part of a larger narrative that's designed to undermine Harry's credibility. They're framing him as someone who's lost his way, when in reality, he's just found his voice. So the next time you hear about Harry's fall from grace, remember this. It's not about Harry changing for the worse. It's about him stepping out of the shadow of a system that never truly supported him or Meghan. And that's something worth applauding, not criticising. Thanks for listening to Meghan and Harry Tales. We'll be back with more insights and analysis as we continue to challenge the narrative around Harry and Meghan. Until next time, stay curious and always question the story you're being told.